Uh, Mayor Melham, you said that you got quite ill around November of 2019. What happened? What were your symptoms?
So the symptoms that I experienced back in November of 19 were a really, really high fever. And I'm not prone to high fevers at all. So it was really high fevers, aches, a lot of aches, chills, a sore throat that lasted for nearly a month or so, something that I just could not get rid of. And I did have some mild hallucinations as well at the time.
You went and got corona antibody testing. What motivated you to do that at the time that you did it? Why not sooner? Why did you make that decision, and how did you go about doing it?
What happened was I went for an annual physical. I go every single year for an annual physical. And as I attended my annual physical, I said to my doctor, I said, "You're going to draw blood for me. Is there any chance that you can test my blood for the corona antibody?" And he said, "Why?" I said, "Remember how sick I was back in November? It just wasn't right. It was not the flu. I know it wasn't the flu. It certainly wasn't my allergies or my sinus infections." And I said, "Then can you please test for it?" Him and I were just chatting about a couple different things. And a few minutes later, his head looked down, and I saw his eyes almost came out of his head. And he looked at me, and he looked back at it. And he looked at me, and he looked back at it. He goes, "You're positive. You have the antibody." And I said, "I knew it. I knew it." He said, "But the timeline doesn't work." I said, "Whose timeline doesn't work? You can't tell me that I wasn't sick."
So I have to ask you, because I'm sure you've heard the response from cynics. You've touched on some of them. Scenario A, you had this in November, showed very significant symptoms before the timeline that is generally accepted by most experts and understood by most experts. Or B, you contracted an asymptomatic version in January when it was known to have been in the US. I want to be clear for our viewers. You've said that you are in touch with your body. You've drawn the conclusion that it's likely A, but you're not doing so under any sort of medical expertise. You are not a doctor, to my understanding, correct?
No.
Has any doctor confirmed your suspicion that it is A and not B?
That's impossible to do, unfortunately. And I've been very clear. I've been very clear that A, I tested positive for coronavirus, and I've been an advocate for corona antibody testing. And I've also been very clear that it is my suspicion, it is my sincere belief that it was absolutely in November and not in January or February. I've also received dozens and dozens of emails and probably hundreds of social media comments of people sharing my story and sharing their own stories with me, thanking me for coming forward, because we were overrun from what I'm told in November and December with people very, very sick that tested negative for flu A, tested negative for flu B, tested negative for strep, that were going repeatedly to their doctors in November and December, and that were told that they don't have a flu, they just have bronchitis, they just have a bad cough, or it's a bad cold. And I think that we just weren't expecting it then, so therefore the doctors didn't know what to call it or what to expect. I by no means in saying that I'm a doctor and saying that I have proof positive, but it's very, very, in my opinion, it's extremely likely, based upon my own evidence, based upon my symptoms, based upon my timeline, and based upon the hundreds of other people who also believed they were very, very ill at that time period.
The executive director of the American Public Health Association said it might be plausible, but it's not likely. That is from the American Public Health Association. What's your response to that?
I stand up to say that I was sick in November. I met all of the criteria. I have a positive antibody test, and I am certainly not alone in my assertion that I was sick in November. There are many, many other people. And I asked on Twitter. I'm still waiting for a major U.S. market-based media company to do an investigation, to do a study into just how many people think they were sick, and then go back and find out how many people actually thought they were sick and have tested positive for the antibody. I think that will settle a lot of debate.
You wrote on social media, "I will not be silenced." So I have to ask, who is trying to silence you?
So when I say silenced, I mean there are people that think that I'm a conspiracy theorist. I am not. There are people that think I'm a crazy tinfoil hat wearing person. You can tell I'm not. I'm just somebody that believes what a lot of other people believe. The difference is this: I'm a mayor of a city in New Jersey that's been ravaged by coronavirus. I think that gives me some credibility to speak on this. and I think I have a voice. And there are a lot of people that have warned me. I've been issued warnings for my safety. I've been issued warnings that say, don't cross this administration or don't cross that government. I'm not here to talk about an administration. I'm not here to talk about a specific country. I'm here to say that I believe I was sick in November. I believe there's a lot of evidence that supports that. And I believe there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, that concur with me on that.